Hare Krishna, everyone. I hope you're all well. Starting a new week, at least for me, it's Monday, and reading from the Bhagavad Gita. We're moving on to the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled Transcendental Knowledge. And before I read a very relevant verse, let me just make a comment about one of the structural elements of the Bhagavad Gita. No news to anybody that in order to advance in any field of activity, you have to have knowledge about that. And the same goes with yoga. And yoga is a system, it's like a staircase of development of one yoga system to the other, and even within individual yoga system, there will be many different steps. And in order to make the step to go from one to another, you have to have knowledge. It's like education. There's an educational system. Now, we've all gone to elementary school. And in elementary school, well, at least when I went, there were 7 grades. So you get knowledge, and according to your learning, then you get promoted from one grade to the next. Then, when you finished elementary school, the next step is high school, then there's university, and there's also subdivisions in all of those. So yoga is also like that. And the structure of the Bhagavad Gita is such that Krishna explains the yoga system, and he gives knowledge in order to be able to understand it, to practice it. And every time he takes us to another step, then he gives more knowledge. Now, if you remember, the previous chapter was called Karma Yoga, and we explained that karma is about activity. How with activity, which usually binds to the material world, how activity can actually be changed to liberate. And the main changing element is your consciousness. Now, Krishna is adding some more knowledge, and we will come to the 5th chapter, which will also be called Karma Yoga, but Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. In other words, Krishna is raising our awareness of action, that we're not just dedicating something to the Supreme, but you get a different result when you know who the Supreme is. And that's what this verse is about. And it's a potentially very interesting and elaborate discussion, which I'll try to just abbreviate and discuss briefly. But the main theme is, when we are talking about the Supreme, are we talking about a what, or are we talking about a who? In other words, is the Supreme, is the absolute truth, is the goal of yoga a supreme person, or something impersonal, or even, as Buddhism would say, some kind of void? So now we get input into this very important question from Krishna, because once again, according to what you know, you're going to get a corresponding result. If you only know schooling up to grade 7, that's as far as you get, and you're not going to get a very good job. But if you've got a PhD, then you get a high-paying job and a very specialized type of service. So knowledge is the important factor. Now, Krishna says in Sanskrit, Janma karma chame divyam evam jo veti tattvataha Tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mam eti so Arjuna. Translation. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but he attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. In case I hadn't mentioned it, the Bhagavad Gita is a discourse. Mostly it's Krishna who is speaking to his friend and disciple Arjuna. So Krishna is in the role of the teacher, of the spiritual teacher, the guru. So two things Krishna is talking about here, his janma and his karma, his birth and his activities. And he says, me. So you have to picture that here is a person standing in front of another person. Krishna is speaking, and he's saying, me. Janma karma chami divyam. And he says divya. Divya means transcendental. And the word transcendental, you look it up, it means that which is beyond matter. Matter means beyond time and beyond space. Janma karma chami divyam. So something that's transcendent, that's not subject to decay, that's not subject to death, that's not even subject to birth. Very interestingly, he says, Janma karma chami divyam. He says, my birth and my activities are divya. They're transcendental. They're not like ordinary. How are they transcendental? They're transcendental in the sense that, like us, Krishna is eternal. The soul is eternal. So that means we're also transcendental. The problem with us is that we're not acting in a transcendental way. So our karma is not divya, and that's why we're practicing karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and so on. So we want to spiritualize our lives, spiritualize our work, our conduct, how we live. Janma karma chami divyam. So these are transcendental. And here, as I mentioned, this picture, a person is standing there, so Krishna is saying, me. Janma karma chame divyam evam jo veti tatvata. And someone who knows me in truth. So knowing Krishna in truth, knowing the Supreme in truth, and of course this is elaborated on in the Bhagavad Gita, and other texts, scriptures, of which the Bhagavad Gita is one of the main. These are called the Vedas. It's the literature, not just the spiritual literature, but the overall literature of India. So he says, know me in truth. And one aspect of knowing the Supreme in truth is to know that the Supreme has three features. We're getting into some philosophy here. One is impersonal energy. Yay for those who are looking for some impersonal thing to surrender to. Yes, the sunlight is impersonal. The wind is impersonal. But who made the sunlight? And who makes the wind blow? And there are so many impersonal features of a person. Even just the word itself, what does impersonal mean? It immediately implies that there's a person. It's just like when you say the word atheist, immediately implies that there's a concept of theism, that there's a concept of a God. So, janma karma chame devyam evam jo veti tatvata. There's the impersonal feature of the Absolute. There's the localized feature, who's in everybody's heart. Yes, the Supreme is in everybody. That doesn't mean that we're the Supreme, but the Supreme is also within everyone and in everything. But separate from that, he's also a Supreme Being. And how's that possible? Well, Divyam, he is transcendental. So if you understand this, then what happens? Chakta deham punar janma naitimam eti. He says, once you leave this body, he says, he comes to me and doesn't take birth again in this world. So very, very interesting. Let me just repeat the verse. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Yogis, Gyanis, mystics, they're all looking for moksha, to get out of this world. Moksha in its different features is the goal of yoga. Krishna says you can attain that moksha if you actually know me in truth. And if you have that knowledge of the threefold feature of the absolute truth and understand that they're also interdependent in the sense that you have a person, and that supreme person is in everyone's heart, and he's also manifests, his impersonal energies are everywhere. I've never met such a person like that, you may say. Well, you can, but no, we haven't. And even our conception of a person, not a limited small person like us, but an unlimited supreme person. And that's the difference between us and the supreme. We're very, very small, and there's a lot of us. So many different bodies, from blades of grass to elephants and whales and humans of different sorts and colors. And then there's the supreme person, and there's only one. There's only one supreme person. So that's the overall picture of absolute truth, that there's the infinitesimally small sparks of spirit, us, and there's the infinitely large spirit, the one supreme. When you know this, and you add this knowledge to your yoga practice, you become successful in whatever yoga you practice. And that's why we're getting the benefit of transcendental knowledge.